Welcome, everybody, to week 3 of our 4-part summer webinar series in 2026. Today on finding your retirement mindset, backed by popular demand. Tina, you want to advance it to our speaker slide real quick? Awesome. So yours truly in the middle, again, a retirement plan consultant working with a number of our institutional and corporate retirement plan clients. Paul and Tina, you want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Paul Horn, Director of Financial Planning. I lead this. Wow, got hiccups here already. I lead the financial planning team here. There's about 8 of us total. I've been doing this for over 20 years and hope to share a little bit of insights that I've seen working with retirees over that time.
Hi, my name is Tina Shackman. I'm also a senior retirement plan consultant. I'm in the same role that Chad does and also participate in a lot of these type of education meetings.
Awesome. Thanks, you too. Before we get into this, I'm excited for this presentation. It was really well received when we did it a few years ago, so we need to bring it back every few years as we have a new class of people that are heading into retirement. So again, just for this is backed by popular demand. I think the idea here is everybody thinks, or should I say knows, they're ready for retirement. But the big thing is most people have really thought about it financially, but not emotionally. Like, are you actually ready for retirement? So we're actually bringing back interactiveness to this to keep you all engaged, at least at the very beginning of the presentation. We all have a lot of stories to share along the way in this presentation, but we have a couple interactive polls so we can learn more about the audience and what you're thinking about, which will help guide our presenter speakers throughout the presentation. With that, Tina, let me hand it over to you to kick us off.
Yeah, you got it. Well, I'm excited about this topic because retirement is really one of life's major transitions. We go through a lot during life, but retirement's a big one, and it can be very, very fulfilling if there's a plan in place. And we know that most folks put together a financial plan, but today we're really going to be talking more about a full comprehensive retirement plan that does include more of a emotional side to things. And you can see 74% of people have made a serious effort to plan financially for the retirement, but 35% of people have made a serious effort to plan emotionally. And most people are going to find themselves spending a third of their life, could be 25, 30 years in retirement, and people will experience a variety of emotions from exuberance to anxiety and everything in between. So very important to visualize and set goals for retirement and really be ready for that emotional side. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
Paul, did you want to add anything?
For sure. Yeah. The main thing around today, you guys, the big recurring theme is going to be intentional. If you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. That applies to every aspect of life. That's why 3 out of 4 people plan financially for retirement. But that's just one part of the equation. The other part is, are you emotionally, ready for it? And we want to talk today about some ways that kind of help frame the way you think about retirement so you can be a little bit more intentional in how you perceive it and how you approach it.
Perfect. So on our agenda today, we are going to list out some questions to consider as you're preparing for retirement, help you manage some of the expectations of retirement, and develop that retirement mindset. We'll also, at the end, have some practical things that you can do to be emotionally and physically prepared for retirement. So, Chad, I'm going to turn it over to you for our first poll question.
It just popped it up. It should, for any of you on your computer, have popped up on your screen. But the question we have for all of you, please do respond to the poll if you're able to, is why do you even want to retire? Right? Is it just because you're reaching the age and that's what people do, or you want to stop working, or you're feeling ready, just want to do other things like maybe volunteer, etc., or you just reached a certain asset level and you can retire, or do you just have no idea? Like, that's just what people do. And of course, there's the other bucket, right? A lot of people it's none of those, but I have something else to do. And we do welcome you if you want to share with all of our other people here. What are some of those ideas? Put them in the chat box and we can let some other people kind of see some of your cool ideas too. I'm going to end poll. I'll share results with the group. So what we have here is about 16% of people say they're just reaching the age. 31% of people say, I want to stop working. 23 say, I'm just ready to retire. 50% say, I just want to do other things. Like, this is what I've been doing for my whole life. 19% reach a certain asset level, 4% no idea, and 13% just have other cool ideas in mind that they want to do.
All right, so this exact poll was actually done by Greenwald and Associates a few years ago, and I absolutely love seeing these results that I see here. Because when this was done with a random sample of individuals by Greenwald, what they found was reaching a certain age, which was 59%, was the reason somebody was ready to retire. Um, that's not having a plan. That's just picking an arbitrary number. And for most individuals, that's just saying when I reach age 65, that's when I'm retiring because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's not having an actual plan. Seeing people wanting to stop working, or the thing I love most is this wanting to do other things. We got 3/4 of all participants and individuals watching today interact, and half of them just simply say, I want to do other things. That's great. That tells us that you're thinking about this and that intentionality that I already mentioned, you're showing that, and that's wonderful. I also like the fact that we had 23% just feeling ready for it. And then just another 31 being honest and just I want to stop working. Tired of getting up at 4:30, tired of the grind, just want to move on with my life.
But
And looking at some of these other ideas, there's some great things here. My favorite so far is wanting to go scuba diving.
yeah, fantastic.
Yes, that's having a plan right there. I like it.
Awesome. So to that end, what do you want to do? We already got one person saying scuba in retirement. Let me launch the next poll. Tina, advance the slide. This should
Yeah.
also pop up. This is our last poll of the day, just to kick us off and get us started as we get into the presentation. But what do the rest of you want to do in retirement? And again, obviously, we are going to have a lot of others out there, so feel free to drop them in that chat box and let some people know about your cool plans. I just talked to somebody the other day who said, I want to sleep for a year and then I'm going to travel the world for 20 years. Let me end the poll here. We got most people have already responded. And again, I'll share results with the group. But we got about over 70% say I want to travel, 70% say time with family and our friends, which could also be part of travel depending where they live. Nearly 40% saying I want to volunteer. Nearly 50% saying hobbies. That probably extends beyond pickleball, golf, and gardening. 72% are going to stay active. Only 1% say sleep all day. That's awesome. We have plans for retirement, and 11% saying other. I just got something else cool I want to do.
All right. So I again just looking through the results here, it's wonderful to see. Everybody's really got a thought on this. A lot of times I have to go through an exercise here where I tell everybody to close their eyes. You won the lottery. Tomorrow's your first day of retirement. What are you going to wake up and do? If you don't know what you want to do, take a second and answer that question. But what I'm seeing here is everybody wants to stay active. Everybody wants to travel. Everybody wants to spend time with family or friends. If that's not being intentional, if that's not having goals, then I don't know what else to say. I mean, honestly, I don't know if we need to really continue this webinar with the overwhelming response and people being so thoughtful in this. And just seeing the result, the different mentions here is fun. I've got different things I've never heard of. I've got some people wanting to volunteer, whether it's at a high school or other places. E-foil. I don't even know what that is, but now I want to learn and try. And then there's a lot of the standard stuff, travel, time with the grandkids, fishing, and someone after my own heart, buy a Ferrari and drive. I like that. Me, my first day of retirement, what it looks like for me personally, I'm buying a Porsche. That's going to be the one selfish decision I'm going to make in my life is I'm buying a Porsche. If I can afford a nice new Porsche, great. I'm getting a nice new Porsche. If it's a Porsche that's 30 years old and barely drives, that's what I'm buying. And if it's one of those little metal die-cast Hot Wheels Porsches, if that's all I can afford, then that's what I'm buying. But I am buying a Porsche on the first day of my retirement. That's my big plan there.
I like that in the chat. They're like, why wait?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I've already got a Porsche. Go get it.
I agree with that. This is what my wife just wants to go work, volunteer San Diego Safari Park at the elephant exhibit that is brand new and amazing, by the way, and just talk to people about elephants all day, every day.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I think what you're kind of talking about is that repurposing that we think about. People go most of their life working and they become somebody, if they're a leader, in their job, then they can repurpose that and find a way to be a leadership or leader in their community or serve on nonprofits. If they like to solve problems, maybe they do consulting work. If they're a social butterfly or like being on a team like you, Chad, maybe they do volunteer work. So there's lots of different ways to think about, who you've been and then how you can kind of repurpose that in retirement. So, to Paul's point about kind of thinking about if you won the lottery, what would you do? That introspection that, can really go a long way with kind of envisioning what retirement's going to look like.
So I love that now we know what everybody here knows they want to do in retirement, and we have a big group that has an idea. I think the biggest question, Tina, if you advance the slide, is have you talked, if you do have a partner or spouse, have you talked to them and do you know what they want to do? So carry it away.
Yeah, this is the most overlooked question for retirement planning. Single-handedly, I cannot tell you how many times I've met with spouses and retirement plans look completely different. This is why when you're doing this planning, if you have a significant other, it really should be a conversation about us, about we, not about I. So I have, for example, a couple that retired a couple years ago. Husband was a doctor, very, very successful. Wife was stay at home. Doctor just kind of decided he was going to retire. Didn't really talk with anyone, just had a run of bad, frustrating incidents at work and just decided one day he had enough and he retired. Month later, he was done. He was at work. Sorry, he left work, was at home all day, driving his wife bat crap crazy. Within 6 months, he was back at working at an ER 3 days a week, which wasn't even ER doctor, just to get him out of the house because neither of them were ready for that transition. So if retirement happens abruptly, it is important to, sometimes we're forced into retirement. And if that happens, we really just want to make sure that we take a little extra time and are a little bit more methodical with it. And for a lot of spouses, it's different. If you guys want different things in retirement, that's okay. I had one couple, the wife, all she wanted to do was travel. That was her big goal. She had worked 50, 60 hours a week and was just wanting to travel. There's nothing wrong with that. Husband wanted to stay home with the grandbabies and golf. That was his thing. So they compromised. He traveled with her domestically. He wasn't interested in the big trips to Europe like she was. And so she went there with her sisters, with her friends. She had plenty of people to travel with. And so she would be gone for 8, 10 weeks out of the year. He was gone for maybe 1 or 2. And they compromised and they, found a solution that worked for both of them. But having that conversation allows for, both of you to have a successful and happy retirement.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that, this kind of hit me, well, this hit me at home, literally. We had relocated during the pandemic and I work from home, so I continued working, and my husband didn't really have anything to do in the new area that we moved to, and we both kind of decided, well, maybe it's just time to retire. We have a lot of retirees in the neighborhood. I didn't think anything of it. I thought he'd be delighted to hear that. And then a few months down the road, I realized he was really struggling. He was struggling with it because, he didn't feel like he was contributing. He was having a hard time navigating boredom. He just wasn't, really trying to figure it out. And I think what eventually happened is he found his community and realized that, this is a natural thing. It's not a bad thing. Yes, he was 60, not 65, but it did take a little bit of time. So it's not always a one conversation. It was something that really evolved and we had to work through it. So yeah, I appreciate this slide because it's definitely both people's retirements if you have a spouse or significant other. Other questions to consider.
All right. So
Just that one.
yeah, no problem. So these are just some other questions to consider as you're thinking about retirement. If you haven't talked with your spouse about it, this can be a great starting point with just these simple questions. But do you have any specific questions about retiring, financial or otherwise? What are some expectations for retirement in terms of ideas for the future? You'll be able to enjoy, how you spend your time. Where do those expectations come from, and why are they important to you? I really like that last one is why are they important to you? Why does it matter? Are you excited or nervous? Most likely, you're probably both about making that transition to retirement. What do you think is driving those emotions? And then the last one here, what would you need to have happen or to feel confident about in your outlook for retirement?
And the next stage of this presentation is just to manage expectations. Like, what does this really look like for people that have already gone through that transition? So if you advance it, Tina, I think the first thing is about when people retire. And so on the left-hand side of the page, what you see here about current workers, nearly 70% expect to retire at age 65 or later. Whether they want to or they need to, they plan to work to at least 65. The reality, though, what current retirees have been experiencing for the last several years, actually, this number hasn't changed. Not even 40% of people make it there, right? Most people retire before age 65. The average is actually age 62, some before, some a little after, but less than 40% actually make it to 65. Tina, if you click again, just let's put up the reasons for that, right? And hopefully everybody on this call, because you've worked with our team and you're in your retirement plans, is at the very bottom in the purple that says you could afford to retire and you want to do something else, or you got an early retirement package, right? It's a lot of people on this call from that first survey we did. The reality for a lot of people, though, it'll be the top in the gray, right? Maybe changes at the company, or maybe just health problems or disability, not even necessarily your health or disability. A lot of people are in that sandwich generation. You might be taking care of, children and taking care of parents at the exact same time. And you need to be able to support both sides of that discussion. So a lot of reasons why you might retire before age 65. So just to kind of set the stage for what to expect and what to prepare for, and why thinking emotionally about this, so early would be important. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, no, I mean, the ideal thing is it's like flying a plane. Hopefully, with your retirement planning, you have a long runway, so you have plenty of time to prepare, to plan, and then you have a successful takeoff. The reality for some of us is it's not a long runway. It's like getting shot off an aircraft carrier, and you either got to crash or you got to take off right away. And then you have a short runway. So a lot of people can be forced into retirement. My mom worked at Nordstrom's, was very happy, loved her job. She had to have hip and knee replacement. She just simply couldn't stand on her feet all day and do her job anymore. So she was forced to retire early, just health things, just physically couldn't do her job. I see that a lot. I also see a lot of downsizing. We've seen this during COVID. We had a lot of people that got downsized or got placed out of work, and frankly, they just didn't return to the workforce and decided to retire. So I hope it's all the good reasons. The reality is life does happen and does throw us curveballs, and we need to be prepared. And some of you may be thinking, I'm never going to retire. And this is all sounds great and wonderful, but I don't want to retire until I'm 75, maybe 85. And that's fine. You know, um, Hopefully you get to the point where you can retire and you work because you choose to work, not because you have to work. But if you're working and you're living late, just a personal story from one of my mentors in this industry. I was a 20-something young buck right out of college. I had a gentleman in his early 80s that was my mentor. He took his time to train me to become a good advisor. And while I was working with him, his wife passed away. He was 82, his wife was 78, and she was healthy. They rode bikes, like they did the not the mountain biking, the street cycling, the annoying ones when you're driving that you don't want to hit. They were part of those groups. Those people that would ride on a Saturday morning 10, 20 miles a week with a large group, very healthy. But unfortunately, cancer got her. It was a very quick diagnosis, very quick passing. And when she passed, he was still working. And the one thing he said to me that I'll never forget is if I could, I would do this all over and I would have retired when she asked me to retire. So I had more time with her. So again, retirement planning comes down to having effective communications with your spouse. Maybe you want to retire early, great. Hopefully you're that could afford to at 44%. Maybe you don't ever plan on retiring because you love what you do and that's great. But just make sure your loved ones, are on board with that. And if not, make some time for them because we don't get back that time with other individuals. When it's gone, it's gone. Sorry to be
Yeah, make everybody
Debbie
cry
Downer
on
there,
this
but
holiday.
yeah, just an important consideration on the other side of this.
But let's talk about this because a lot of people do actually stay working, right? A little bit older in life or even go back to work. So if you base it, Tina, that's our next slide leading directly into it.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this one because you're right. There are older, people that are staying in the workforce. You have over half of households that are partially retiring. And I think what they're looking at is what do they want versus what they need. And you can see that really it's what they're wanting. They want to stay active, involved, and we kind of see that with, what's going on in the chat. They like working, Chad, you're going to work forever. You like it? That's great. Maybe it's a job opportunity, but then, they're also meeting some needs. Maybe they want, some extra stuff, or they don't want to, cut too much into their nest egg, or they're just trying to make ends meet. So lots of reasons for staying in the workforce. And then, the other statistic there, the 57% retired more than 2 years apart from their spouse if they both worked. So, having that kind of timing and understanding. I have friends out here where she retired at the age of 50 and he's continuing to work, but they that was part of their plan. They are crystal clear on what their retirement's going to be, when they're going to do it, what they're going to do. So, it certainly isn't an issue with having the time difference, but knowing that it's part of a larger plan. I think the other thing too is there's quite a few folks. I think it's 1 in 5, based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, of Americans over the age of 65 that are still in the workforce. 23% are men, 16 are women. So we are starting to see more of that increased kind of phased in retirement. So it doesn't maybe have to be this big major event one day where you're working and the next day you're not. It can just be more of a easing into retirement that might be more desirable. It's kind of that, dip your toe in the water instead of diving in head first. So lots of different ways. It is definitely not black and white. There's a lot of gray area in what it can look like.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what the day in a life of an average retiree looks like. The average retiree spends 4.5 hours a day watching TV. All those daytime shows, now I know who's watching them. We have about 6.25 hours they typically spend relaxing and leisure, whatever that means for them. My favorite, though, is the 9 hours of sleeping. I have two kids, one's 10, one's 12, and I laugh how everything that's a punishment to them, like forcing them to read or go to bed early, sounds like wonderful things to me. So I don't blame people for wanting to sleep. But the reality is if we add up these three different categories here, the watching TV, the relaxing and leisure, the sleeping, that's 20 hours a day. We know we only have 24 hours in a day. So that leaves 4 hours for doing things that you want to do or things that are going to provide fulfillment for you, right? Whether that's working out, doing the traveling, spending time with loved ones, whatever the case is, it's really, really important that we be intentional because when we worked, right, we were told when and where to be. And in retirement, you don't have that structure. So if you don't make the structure for you, if you don't willingly pursue your passions, you're going to be passive and you're going to let the day kind of just get away from you. And so have that fulfilling retirement, figure out what it is that you want to do and chase those passions. And honestly, you may not even know what that looks like yet. So I have a couple, and this is one of my all-time favorite retirement stories. Both lived in San Francisco, both very successful executives, had no kids. They had a great, married 40 years, never had time for an animal. They just traveled and they worked. That's what they did. What they decided when they got retired is they were going to buy a dog. So they bought a dog. Wanted the first time, spent some time doing that. They loved that dang little dog so much, they bought another dog. Same breed. Same breeder, in fact. They loved that second dog so much, and it was such a well-trained dog They started doing dog shows. They started winning dog shows. That meant they started breeding. From breeding in dog shows, that meant a lot of travel. So instead of traveling to Europe, they were traveling from San Francisco to Phoenix to Dallas to New York for show dogs. So they bought a motorhome, they bought a trailer to haul their dogs and prep them for the dog shows. And that became their lifestyle in retirement. And they were one of the happiest retirees I've ever seen because they found some random passion that they loved and they just went for it full force. So we don't know what might grab our attention. So, I think pickleball is kind of a fun thing here. I live in Scottsdale. We see a lot of it. And my uncle and I know some other retirees here that are twice my age and they whoop my butt playing pickleball because they got all the time in the world and they're fit and healthy to really do that. Another favorite story of mine is we had a couple retire a few years ago and the wife was adamant. She just wanted one thing in retirement and one thing only. She said, my entire life, I have had to make breakfast for everyone else. I want someone to make breakfast for me for the rest of my retirement. So every day we make sure that it was in their budget. They go out for breakfast. She has not made breakfast one day since she retired. So whatever the case is, just find that thing and just pursue it. It could be something as simple as breakfast every day. That's intentional. That's great. Or it could be some random passion like scuba diving or dog breeding or dog showing, whatever the case is. But be whimsical. Like retirement doesn't have to be boring. Have some fun with it.
As it, be careful, man. My wife, other than elephants, wants to foster dogs too, but I just know she's going to foster fail, and we're going to end up with like 40 dogs. Not optimal. I think one of the most important things on this slide is to get through is those three big things Paul mentioned, right? TV, relaxing, leisure, sleeping. The reality of all things is the average retiree's life doesn't change that much. Like what you do doesn't change. Like you're still going to do caregiving. You're still going to do housework. You're still going to do these other things. You're still going to sleep. Maybe instead of 6 to 8 hours, you sleep 8 to 9 hours. But the reality of all things, it's just making up that 8 to 10 or 12 hours during the day that you were working and figuring out what you're going to do now instead, right? Like the typical day doesn't need to change that much unless you want it to, which goes back to Paul's comment of be intentional.
So let's talk about the emotional stages of retirement, right? So you guys may have heard the 6 stages of grief. We have a similar thing here with retirement where I've just noticed there's 6 different emotional stages that people go through. Most of you that are on this webinar today are probably in this first stage, that pre-retirement planning, where you're beginning to think about it. That's great. And then we pick a date to retire. And finally, that big day comes. That's step 2. That's the big day, right? Goodbye job. Hello, freedom. And then from there, what I see is most people go through some sort of honeymoon phase. It's that weight lifted off. It's that accomplishment. I would say that this is really similar to senioritis. For those of you that don't know what senioritis is, we've all been there, but remember your spring semester as a senior in high school. I don't know about you, but when I was a senior, spring semester, I was thinking about graduation. I was thinking about high school. I was thinking about college. I wasn't thinking about that paper I had to write for English that was due. So for most of us, we get senioritis, we get very excited. Our grades kind of go down that last semester, and we get kind of caught up in the excitement of what's going on. And that's what that honeymoon phase is like for a lot of individuals when they first retire. And I've also noticed 2 and 3, for some individuals, it can be 3 before 2. It's kind of like that senioritis, right? You kind of get that feeling, that emotion before you actually graduate high school. It could be the same thing with retirement, where you're kind of excited and just like, that giddy like feeling. For a lot of individuals, that can happen second, and then you have third being the big retirement day. But shortly after that excitement, right, there's always a peak and there's always a valley. That next stage, that 4th stage, is that discouragement and grief. I thought there would be more to this. Is this all that retirement looks like? This is where it's really, really important to be honest with yourself. And this is where the emotional preparation comes into play. Because this part hurts a lot of individuals. We're all going to go through it, especially if you're male. A lot of males, your identity is wrapped up in who you are and what you do. And so for a lot of individuals, could be men, could be women. I've seen this mostly with men, but their self-worth, their identity gets wrapped up in what they do for a living. If you're a doctor, or if you're a lawyer, or if you're a business owner, or whatever your job is, you go to a party, what are the first two questions we get asked when you meet someone new? What's your name? What's your job?
Like, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? And so often we get so wrapped up in that, and we got to retool or repurpose our life. And I love that Tina's already used this phrase, but it's redefining how you see yourself and what you want the rest of your life to be, right? The first part of our life up till retirement, we have to do what we have to do to get to where we want to be. Retirement's getting you to where you want to be. Now you, for the first time in your life, control your destiny. So take full advantage of that and plan and have a purpose.
Yeah.
And then the last stage is just accepting that purpose and making peace with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a third question from a couple of friends that retired. They said, when I go to parties, it's what's your name? What do you do? And they say, I'm retired. And then it's, what did you do? Like, it never goes away.
All right. So when we talk about the different stages of retirement, we can think of retirement as kind of like an Oreo, right? Oreo has you have that small inner layer, and then you have the bigger out one. That's kind of what retirement looks like for most of us from a financial perspective. Big expenses in the front because we're doing the things that we want to do in early retirement. This is typically going to be your first 5 to 10 years in retirement. These are your big trips to Europe. These are your, whatever it is that you want to do, the golfing every day, whatever it is. Then from there, we get into that middle part of retirement. And that's where maybe instead of taking the big trips abroad, maybe we're doing more trips domestically, or maybe we're starting to have family travel to us instead of us traveling to family. And then the late stages of retirement, that's when health begins to fail. That's when it becomes harder to do things. Traveling at that point maybe is family just coming to you, or maybe it's something like cruises where you're able to kind of do everything and still experience some vacation. And I'm sorry about the hiccups here. It's killing me. With this physical stages of retirement, though, it's just important to keep these in mind, because if you do have big plans, when you implement those plans can be impacted by what stage in retirement you're in. Now, with retirement, we talked about the different emotional stages. We've talked about the physical stages here. One thing I just want to say is give yourself grace and be patient. When it comes to retirement, we're going to have some challenges. We're going to have some grace with ourselves as we go through this transition. The average retiree takes about 6 to 12 months to get through those 6 stages of emotional for retirement. And that's going to be most of us in that early retirement cycle where we're still able to do things. If we do work later, maybe retire at 70, 75, maybe you're kind of pushing that middle retirement then. So just be aware of that and be patient, allow things to happen, allow yourself to process and move on.
Yeah, we have an awesome comment that like literally transitions us to the next couple of slides. But somebody saying, I'm amazed at this stage, that people are already telling me what I should do in retirement, right? And what they want me to do in retirement and how I should spend my time. So in another comment, that it's your circus. You got to do whatever you want. And I think it's great leading into this. Like, how do you develop that mindset? Like, what do you want to do? And don't listen to everybody else. Like, they might have cool ideas that you want to take into account, but again, let's develop your own mindset.
Okay. All right. So when we talk about developing a retirement mindset, the first thing we need to look at is just the practical challenges that we faced. The first one is that feeling isolated. A lot of retirees, if you don't have a strong social network, if you don't have a big group of friends or family to lean on, it's very easy to feel isolated. And that's what's going to lead a lot of people to some sort of depression or anxiety. And you're going to be more inclined to sit and watch TV all day because you don't know what else to do to fill your time. Experiencing a decline in how useful, important, or self-confident you feel, right? Because again, we talked about this already. But if your identity is tied up in what you do for a living and you lose that, there's a grief that you go through, right? When you lose a loved one, there's a grieving process. And for a lot of retirees, there's a similar grieving process that you have to go through, kind of losing the old you while you're finding the new you. And this is going to cause feelings of anxiety, especially when we are used to having that stable paycheck and we don't have that in retirement. And then finally, out of all these emotions, is where you're going to start creating a new identity based on what you want and hopefully not what on others are telling you.
Well, and I'll transition into kind of more of the emotional challenges, and really just to take off from what you were talking about, it's, kind of that struggling to switch off. You're in work mode, you've been doing this for decades, and now you've got a lot of free time. So it's that structure to a lot of freedom. It's definitely going to be a transition and something that you'd have to work out. The other is, finding it difficult to find, or to fill in those extra hours. Chad kind of commented, there's still things you're going to be doing on a daily basis, but you did have that structure and that, that where to go, what to do, who to do it with, that kind of, can go away unless you are doing some active things or you're volunteering or phasing out. So, finding, things that can be meaningful for you, can be a challenge. And then, adjusting that routine, or maintaining your independence now that you're at home, with your spouse during the day. So this wasn't a retirement issue, but I did find out during COVID that my husband was pretty used to my routine, which was going to work and going to the office and being out of the house for, 8, 10 hours a day. And when COVID hit and I was home all the time, I probably was cramping his style, I guess. So it was one of those things we kind of had to figure out and adjust to. And I think couples can go through that when one retires, or, they just have to kind of figure out how to deal with being there, in their space every day, all the time. So certainly a consideration. And then this one, I find it a little interesting that some retirees might feel guilty about receiving, pension money. We pay into the system, we're paying taxes, we're paying Social Security. If you had a defined benefit plan, you may not have been making as much in your salary. We definitely have been paying into these systems. So there would be no reason to feel guilty about, receiving any of that money. I think that's something that we all deserve, and good on you for being able to have, some of those monies that might be coming in, on a regular basis that can give you some stability. So I would think that would be an easy thing to turn around.
Some people might think that's a crazy one to feel guilty about. This is a honest thing that people feel guilty about, to be honest. It's weird to think about it, but it is not uncommon.
So next slide is, we've talked about kind of the practical and emotional challenges that we face. Just remember to understand the difference between change versus a transition. I think this is really important because everybody focuses on the change. We can't control that. Change is an event that is situational and external to us. This could be marriage, death of a loved one, divorce, illness, or in this case, retirement. Transition, however, is the internal process of adapting to the change. That's what we control. We can't control what happens. We control how we react to what has happened. So transition involves many phases. We talked about the 6 stages already, and it is not a linear process. You may go through and get this plan in place, say, I'm going to work out every day, I'm going to start hanging out with friends, and you may do that. And even though you're doing it, that feeling of grief may still be there. It may still nag at you. That guilt for getting that pension may still nag at you, whatever the case is. And you may feel like you're, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's okay, as long as you continue to move forward, because it's not a linear process. Nothing in life is straight. Nothing in life is simple. It's not a line. It's all squiggly and curves and all over the place. Look at nature. It's not a straight line. It's jagged, and that's okay.
And it's going to work out different for every individual, right?
Yeah.
And every couple, for those of you with a partner. I tell you, even my own parents, my mom retired a few years before my dad. He was working 10 to 12 hours a day. She was used to it. She had a big social network, was, walking with friends and hiking with friends, doing things. The moment he retired, he wanted to start traveling. So they started going on trips. He would book the next trip 2 weeks later while they were on a trip. And my mom got ultra frustrated within the first 3 months, saying, I don't have any time. Like, it's always during the week so we could have barbecues on the weekend with our family. I don't get to go to the book club or go walking with my friends that I do Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday anymore. And basically told them she wasn't going on the next like 4 trips. Right. So it was, for them, it was a transition, but it was two transitions, one for her to first retire, one for him to retire, and then one for her to say, I'm not doing what I want in retirement. Let's revisit this.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes here is from Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all times.
Yeah.
I'm a Patriots homer, so I'm going to say that it is what it is. You're allowed to disagree with me, even if you're wrong. But his big thing when he was a coach in the locker room in big letters said, respect the process. I cannot think of a better phrase when we're dealing with the emotional side of retirement than respect the process. We're going to go through it. If you respect it and treat it with what it is, a transition, not a change, you're going to be a lot happier and it's going to be a lot simpler and a lot smoother for you. So we talked about respecting the process here. So how do you shift your retirement to respect the process? Well, one, we look at retirement as a lifestyle because that's what it is. It's a decision. It's an active decision that we take. It's a decision that we take every day so that we're not watching TV for 6 hours and sleeping for 12 hours. And that's going to mean staying active. That's going to be taking care of your mind, right? There's a lot of studies out there say the more reading you do, the more intellectual activities you do, it's going to stave off things like dementia and Alzheimer's. Maybe it won't stop it, but it can, reduce the implications, lower likelihood of it. And keeping retirement as a mindset. It's not a positive or, you have the choice to be positive or negative. So choose to be positive. But with those two things, it's going to really help you frame that, respecting the process.
And we kind of built a process. So I love mnemonics. It's how I got through school. So we've got a blueprint for you. It's create. And this is really going to be this time to, create, this new phase of your life. So first part, C, is connection. Finding your community. And it's good to actually try and find this community before you retire. Find something that, you're interested in, whether it's, dog rescues or, country club, whatever it is. It can be really important because it does kind of help with replacing that built-in social system you may have gotten through work. And when someone retires, they, tend to lose that, daily interaction, recognition, routine. Maybe, there's that feeling that people are depending on you. So those are important things you can get. You can get those benefits through a strong community. The R is rhythm. So moving from kind of structured time to free time. We've talked about that before. The structure really helps feed these routines. And it's important because work once organized a lot of that. Paul talked about it's, when you wake up, where you go, what you're going to do, who you're going to interact with. That framework will disappear with no works, and then you'll have unlimited free time. That could feel very liberating in the beginning, but we've seen kind of some of these stories. It could lead to some boredom, feelings of isolation. So kind of creating that rhythm will help. And then identity is expanding your identity. So beyond what you did for a living, this is really going to be your time to explore. And it's, not just going to be travel. It can be around, whatever your passions are. That slide we just looked at, the retirement mindset is a growth mindset. And it's really a time for self-reflection. A is for agency, and agency doesn't mean, controlling every outcome. There's going to be your health, the financial markets, maybe family circumstances, how long you're going to live. There's a lot of uncertainty around all of those. What it means is it's identifying what, really remains within your control and acting intentionally in those areas. So, an example might be we can't control what the markets are going to do or what the economy is going to do, but we can control our spending decisions. We can control when we might need to make a big purchase. The other part of it is we may not be able to prevent, health change. Something may happen, but we can influence how we move on a daily basis, what our nutrition is going to be, what our social life will look like, staying active mentally and physically. So that's agency. The T is to, not from. So this is your new chapter, and you don't want to necessarily focus on what you're leaving behind. I saw in the chat someone talked about not commuting anymore. So, we'll leave, leaving behind commutes or deadlines. Maybe it's a difficult client or coworker. No more early meetings. No more work, place stress. Those are all things, that we definitely won't have if when we're retiring, hopefully. But you want to really focus more on what you're going to and what you're retiring to, and that can be, scuba diving, more time with family, more physical, emotional health, traveling, new experiences. So that's what you really want to stay focused on. And I think, the other part of it is evolution. That's really the last E here, and it's that we also want to be really flexible when we're going into this transitional part of our life, because things will change. Then things can change with our family, with our health, as we've talked about before. So I think it's just having that understanding of knowing that things will change, but that's really the beauty of retirement. We have the ability to be more adaptable to some of those changes that are coming our way. So that's really kind of our blueprint for success in retirement.
Let's talk about retooling with purpose. Okay. First thing is we want to create a cycle of success by setting goals that can accomplish and move you towards larger goals. So this can be as simple as I don't have a social network. I need to find one in retirement. We'll set some small goals. Call or reach out to a different friend each day. Go join a class at your local gym where you can start meeting people. Find a book group and start connecting with people, but just choose one small action that's going to, snowball into other actions. So when you say, I don't have anyone to talk to, that sucks. But you can do something about that. You may not have 20 friends tomorrow, but start taking simple steps and putting yourself out there. In a month, you might have one or two. In 2 months, you might have 3 or 4. And in month 5, you might have 15. But if we take small actionable steps, take bite-sized pieces, right? How do you run a marathon? One step at a time. It's the same thought process here when we're going through retirement. And follow your passions. I don't care how silly, how stupid, I don't care what anybody else thinks. If it makes you happy and you want to do it, retirement is your time to pursue it. So follow your passions and just do the things that you want to do. Be whimsical, be fun. Like, don't worry about it. The analogy I like to use here is surfing. Because I don't know if you guys have ever surfed, but surfing is physically kind of a toll. It's hard getting out there. You got your surfboard, you got to swim past the waves, you got to swim through the waves. And then you've got to start swimming hard and you've got to do all that work to just stand up on the stupid board. But once you stand up on that board, enjoy the wave, enjoy the ride. So we want to do all this work ahead of time to create and follow so we can just enjoy that ride, that pursuit of happiness. I don't know about you, but like I'm not a big surfer, but I love surfing when I've done it. And being from Orange County, you would think I would have surfed more, but for me, it's skiing, right? Like I love that going down the mountain, once I get up the hill, getting past the initial crowd of people and everything else. But once you start going down that mountain and you're doing your thing, I love that freedom, that feeling. Just I can't find that anywhere else. And that's what retirement should feel like for you if you're being successful and really doing it. We've talked a lot today about the emotional side of retirement. That's been the primary focus. We've talked a little bit about the mind and reframing it. The one thing that we haven't talked enough about is the physical side of retirement. As we get older, our bodies kind of break down. We lose muscle mass, we lose other things. So part of this whole thing, and I saw this at the very beginning, so that's why I didn't mention as much. Most of you wanted to be staying active in retirement, and that's really important. So walking, pickleball. If you don't know what to do, can we go to the next slide?
Mhm.
There's an excellent resource that everyone should be aware of called Silver Sneakers. It's got an app that you can download. It's got a website. It's silversneakers.com. Really hard there. But with Silver Sneakers, what you can do is you can sign up for them. It's a small monthly fee. And what does it do? It gives you access to gyms. In my area alone, like I just pulled it up, looking within a 5 mile radius, instead of paying a fee to go to one gym, I can use Silver Sneakers, which is a lower cost than what you're going to pay at the gym anyways. And I get access to 7 gyms in my area. Now, I'm not old enough to qualify yet, but it is really important thing to consider. And if you're on Medicare, so if you have any sort of supplement or advantage plan, most of those plans might include Silver Sneakers in that monthly premium that you're paying. So you might already have this benefit and not even be aware of it. But with that app, if you don't want to go anywhere, there's classes and workouts that you can do right from home. And it is a wonderful tool to help you stay active if you have no other idea on what to use. Aside from that, there is a website called It's Your Money and Estate. This is a nonprofit that just does financial literacy for seniors. So if you want to learn more about the money side that we have not talked about to us, please feel free to reach out to one of our CFPs to have a conversation there. And It's Your Money and Webs and Estate gives great overall advice on things from budgeting to understanding basics of investments. So if you want to educate yourself, that's a great resource with great webinars. If you want to do volunteering and you don't know where to volunteer, there's a great website called volunteermatch.org. So you can go there, fill out a little survey, answer some questions, and it'll give you some recommendations on some places, some charities that you can volunteer at that need help. And then finally, of course, BFSG University. This is our website where this webinar will be hosted, and other webinars and other educational resources are located as well.
Yeah, I saw a good comment in the chat as we wrap this thing up too, right at the top of the hour. We don't have any question in the Q&A box, although I know this is a presentation that doesn't usually have a lot of questions, but if there are any, please drop them in there and we're happy to address them. But just because of a couple of comments in here, like where we live, apartment condo has a gym. So we don't really need Silver Sneakers. I could tell you just from one of my uncles that retired, and his wife is still a doctor, and he was just bored, and going to their community or their gym in his community just to work out was one way to stay active. But he actually started going to the gym and got a gym membership so we could go to group classes and just start to meet other people.
Yeah.
We had another story. We did this with a client directly, and one of their people told us, actually came back to help talk to some of their other employees. And the first 6 to 12 months of retirement was very depressing for them after they got through that honeymoon phase. Another good friend of hers actually, got her through that period. She started traveling and just found online, right, between Facebook and all these different online social media programs and meetup of travel groups that travel abroad, and started going on these travel groups with other retirees from around the world, became friends with a lot of them, and now travels 4 or 5 times a year to a new destination with people that she met just joining a travel group on a Facebook group, right? So people she had never met from all over the world and are now friends that they correspond with on a regular basis. So a lot of different ways to meet and get to know new people.
Yeah,
Yep.
Facebook's actually a great place locally. We have tons of biking, hiking, skiing clubs in our area, so definitely can be a good place to meet folks.
Awesome. All right, everyone. So with that, well, we have no questions, just resources here. Again, I did post in the chat, although they will come out in emails tomorrow as well, and Monday from our team or from Zoom, a link to the PDF, a link to the survey. Let us know what you thought. And again, future topics you'd like to hear. We already have a lot of good topics from the first 3 sessions so far. And then when you get the PDF, if you have not registered for Social Security, which is next week, same place, same time, but it is a different link to join, definitely register for that. And we look forward to seeing all of you then. That group, any final remarks as we get to the top of the hour and close this thing out with no questions in the box?
I've had a lot of fun today. The chat has been very interactive, and thank you guys that did attend, and it's been a lot of fun. So thank you for listening to us yap for an hour on this topic.
Yeah, thank you. I would just say, one kind of takeaway, one exercise, if you are interested, is have a discussion with someone about retirement. Could be, a friend, spouse, coworker, maybe not a coworker. You don't know when you're going to retire, but maybe just not so much about the financial side of things, but just what you really envision. It's important to just kind of start having the conversations.
Agreed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the engagement today. Very engaged chat. Thanks for joining our polls as well. We've had a lot of fun today, and hopefully
One
all of
last
you
thing I
did
do want
as
to say.
well.
Sorry, I'm seeing some comments about the financial side. If you do want to talk more about the retirement side, the emotional side of retirement or the financial side, don't hesitate to reach out to us on the email there, financialplanning@bfsg.com, and we can get you set up with myself, Tina, or one of our other financial planners that can talk with you more on any of those topics pertaining to your personal retirement. Free consultation, no cost to you. Happy to have a conversation.
Agreed. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again.
All right.
I hope you all have
Thank you.
an amazing rest of the day.